Hello, everybody. It's good to be back with you. We're going to talk today on Galactic Wisdom about the meaning of life. So what is the meaning of life? Well, there's some fun ways to go around trying to figure that out. One of them is to watch, of course, Monty Python's Meaning of Life. That's a wonderful, fun movie. If you enjoy looking for meaning in comedy, then that's a good one. There's also the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. In the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the meaning of life, they say, well, what is the meaning to life, the universe, and everything? And in that, well, it was originally a radio show, and then a TV show, and then eventually a movie. Which wasn't nearly as good as the other productions, but in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, in order to answer that question, what is the meaning to life, the universe, and everything, a giant computer was constructed and set doing calculations for millions of years, and eventually this computer, which they named Deep Thought, came up with the answer. And the answer in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy turned out to be 42. And that was, okay, well, but we don't get it. What does that answer even mean? And then Deep Thought said, well, the problem was you hadn't really defined the question very well. The answer is 42, but what is the question to life, the universe, and everything? And really, that's part of what this show today is about. Well, what is the question that we're asking when we're asking, what is the meaning of life? Now, in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, they created the Earth as a second big, giant supercomputer that would run for billions of years before producing the question to what is the meaning of life. To the question that will be able to answer 42. And unfortunately, the Earth was infected when human beings crashed on it and populated the planet. And so the question and the answer ended up not making an awful lot of sense to people. But I'm going to tell you what I think about the meaning of life. So when people ask that question, what is the meaning of life? Really, there's lots of sub-questions. There's hidden questions within that. Well, they may be hidden, they may not be hidden. But within that question, what is the meaning of life? Really have the questions, what is the reason for my existence? What is the purpose of my existence, my life? And a lot of people will bring into that whether or not a conscious being created them. If a conscious being created them, then if the conscious being had an idea, a purpose, a reason for creating the people, does that somehow impact your meaning of life? So if a conscious being created us, what do they want me or us to do with our lives? And this is a question that we are going to look at today. These are all questions we're going to look at today. Whether a conscious being created us or not, we can ask the question, what should we do with our lives? So within all of these questions are the sub-questions, how did I come to exist? Did a conscious being have a role in creating me? And ultimately, hopefully before the end of this show, I will give you my answer to those questions and what should I do with my life? I got a migraine the last time I did this show because I was talking too quickly and not breathing enough. So I'm going to pause a little bit and take a drink. So also in today's show, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my upcoming tour. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the events that I've been doing where I've been connecting with different non-human entities. And so all of that is to come up in the next 40 minutes. So let's think about whether or not we were created. We clearly were created, I mean, most of us, by our parents. So let's have a little bit of a think about that. If our parents did create us, then we could ask ourselves their purpose for creating us. If they had a purpose for creating us that was consciously thought out in some way, rather than it just being an act of passion, if there was a conscious thought behind creating us, would that impact for us our meaning of life? So let's say, a hypothetical situation, probably not very likely, but let's say we were created by our parents because they wanted somebody to help them around the house. If that were true, would that mean that our meaning of life would be transferred from them to us, and our meaning of life would be to help them around the house? Now, it's my view that whatever my parents were thinking when they wanted to have kids, when they decided to have kids, I'm one of 3 children, whatever they were thinking, whatever their purpose in having me, I am an independent person from them, and I am allowed to choose my own purpose in being alive, my own reason for being alive, my own meaning of life. And I think for most human beings, after they get to a certain age, they do have that idea that, well, thank you, parents. I still love you, probably most of the time, regardless of how annoying you may or may not be at times. Thank you very much, but I'm now my own person, and I'm going to choose my own meaning of life. So one of the questions we have to ask ourselves, or we can ask ourselves, is if another conscious entity, like a godlike entity, were to have somehow created us, somehow had a hand in creating either us as individuals, or as a species, or as a planet, and therefore a species, if there was a conscious thought behind the creation of humans, does that mean we inherit their purpose? It's my assertion that in the same way that we don't inherit our parents' meaning of life, purpose in being alive, we don't need to take on if there were a creator, whatever we call that creator being that a lot of people believe in, whether people call them God or Hashem or Source or Creator, if there were a creator being behind our existence, we don't need to take on their purpose. It doesn't need to transfer across to us. They might have had a purpose in creating us, but it doesn't mean that we need to live our lives according to that. And I'm going to go into this idea a little bit more. If a creator did exist who was a benevolent, loving, caring, non-dictatorial kind of creator, wouldn't that kind of a creator be okay with us choosing our own way forwards? Isn't that like what free will is about? Hypothetically, if a creator being existed, and I kind of have to think about if there were, hypothetically, a creator being who had created me for a reason. I would be interested in having a conversation with them and asking them, hey, why did you create me? What reason for creating me did you have? And can you tell it to me so that I can think about leading my life according to it? I find that as much as I have tried in my life, especially when I was much younger, tried to have that kind of a dialogue with a hypothetical creator being, I've never been able to establish one. I find that I'm able to talk to humans, and sometimes, a lot of the time, they answer back. Most of the time, they answer back, even when I don't want them to. I find that I'm able to establish conversations with non-human entities, what we might call aliens or extraterrestrials. I can do that. That's something I do. I meditate, I reach out to them, and in my mind, I ask them questions, and they give me answers. That's something I can do. That's probably something you could do if you were to try. If you were to come to some of my events, you might be able to do that. But I did, as a child, well, through into my early 20s probably, I did spend quite a lot of time praying, reaching out like I reach out now to aliens, but doing it in a more religious kind of prayer-like way to a hypothetical creator being. And you know what? I never got an answer. I never established a conversation with them. And it seems clear to me that, I come in contact with a lot of people who believe in aliens, a lot of people who believe in a creator being of different names, different religions in different parts of the world, and in the same part of the world. And a lot of the people who believe in aliens, they talk to aliens, and the aliens talk back to them. And the aliens visit them even sometimes. But almost nobody who I know who believes in God actually has conversations where they actually hear back from God. There's no conversation. It seems to be any kind of a dialogue seems to be more on a sort of I'm guessing that this thing that happened in life is a message and signs and symbols and things. So if hypothetically a creator being existed, my question is, why do they not want to tell me what my meaning of life is, why they created me, what my purpose is? I can read theories in books and in ancient texts, but there's lots of books and lots of theories and lots of ancient texts, and none of them prove anything. You have to have faith in them all. And it's like, well, which one should you have faith in? Anthropologists have estimated that over the years, over 18,000 gods and deities have been and are worshipped by humans throughout history. How do we go about deciding which of those is true when none of them actually offer proof? They just offer words, stories, oral traditions, and no way of actually talking to the God to confirm any of it. And so if hypothetically a creator being existed, could it be that we don't need to know what our meanings of life are? Could it be that the creator being, if they existed, being a benevolent being who, a creator rather than a destroyer, although that seems to be, a lot of gods seem to be destroyers also, could it be that they want us to choose our own meaning of life? It seems to be that way if they did exist. Now I can go deeper and ask, well, does a creator exist? did somebody create me? Was there a conscious purpose to me being created outside of, my parents' desires to have children? Excuse me, sipping on my hot chocolate there. I have spent my whole life trying to work out reality. Now, you can believe anything you want. Believing is accepting something as being true without proof. That's why it's a belief and not knowledge. That's why you need a leap of faith with beliefs, because nothing's proved. I've spent my life trying to seek proofs outside of beliefs. And I have not found anything to support, for me personally, any reality of a creator being. Now, I do apologize if my words upset people. I don't like upsetting people. I like to try and be respectful of people and people's beliefs. But I am in a situation where people want to hear what I think. And so I'm going to tell you what I think. And what I do think is, if you do believe in a creator, I still want to be friends with you. I still want to live in peace with you. I don't think it should be something that we need to fight over. I put peace above everything else. And I hope that other people do. And I think part of the problem, with some people's beliefs is, if you put your beliefs, things that have not been proved, above peace, whether it's a religious belief or a political belief, a philosophical belief about the way you lead your life, if you put anything above peace, then you don't get peace. And that's one of the big problems on this planet right now. So I put peace above everything else. So I'm going to tell you my views, and it's okay if I apologize if my views offend you, but I want to let you know clearly that I still want to be peaceful with you. I still want to be your friends. So the way I went about trying to figure out what is real and what is not real in this world, there I am as a kid, reading ghost stories and seeing movies about aliens, and also hearing about being taught religious things about Jesus and God when I was at school. And in church, I went to church occasionally as a child. My family wasn't really religious, but we did occasionally go to church, and my father was religious. And so I'm hearing all of these different ideas, and I'm trying to figure out, well, what's real? I'm going to grow up into this world. It would help to know, in dealing with my life, in figuring out a direction in life, it would help to know if Jesus was real, if God was real, if they're on my side, if they're going to help me, and if I support and worship them, is that going to be a direction in my life? A ghost's real. Like, should I lead my life like one day when I die, I'm going to be able to continue living? Should I lead my life like I'm going to be able to get a second chance and come back, because of reincarnation? If aliens are out there, do they have the answers? Should I be trying to connect with those aliens so I can get some of these answers? My quest for trying to understand reality really was so that I could figure out, what should I do with my life? What should my purpose be in life? That's why I've always tried to answer these big questions. So how did I try and figure out the answer to these questions? Excuse me. Well, I went to church and I learned about religion. I went up on hillsides when I was still, in my teens, and tried to reach out to aliens and see if they would come in. I, at school, learned as much as I could because, for a while when I was a kid, I assumed that the adults knew what was going on, and they would help me to figure stuff out. And if I went to school and learnt what they were telling me in lessons, I thought I would be able to figure out a huge chunk about reality and know how to lead my life. And one of the subjects at school, the subject at school, which really helps you to figure out what is real and what is not, is science. There are other subjects which also try and tell you truths, like history, truths about the past. I wasn't interested in the past back then. I now feel more interested in history because it can give us lessons about how our species has always been and still is. We're still the same species. But it was science. Science was the big thing, the big subject that was going to enable me to figure out what is real and what is not real. Now, a lot of people don't get science. A lot of people will say, Rupert, science is just another belief system. You believe in science. And it's a shame when people think that, because it really shows that they don't know what science is. Science is a way to figure out truths about reality because it uses a process that is defined as, logic is defined as the process that enables us to deduce truths. Not guesses, not beliefs, but actual truths. Logic is a process by which you can prove things to be true. There is a difference between proving something to know it to be true and not proving something so you just accept it as being true with no proof. That's a belief. That proof thing, that is the difference between knowledge and between belief. And the process by which we get to knowledge is to prove things. Now, knowledge, logic can be very, very simple. It can be as simple as, in my mind, I have an image, I have an idea, I've learned what an elephant is. I have an image of an elephant in my head. And if somebody asks me a question, is this thing that I'm holding up there, is that an elephant? Well, I compare this with what I know an elephant to be, and it's not equals to. It's an equal sign with a slash through it. It's not equal to an elephant. I've just logically proved that this is not an elephant. So there was no science involved in that. There was logic that my mind was able to use, even if I didn't realize I was using logic. We can use logic, and we do use logic all the time to work out truths. We can step outside and logically deduce if it's nighttime or daytime. And most people can do that very accurately. It's not that hard. We can use logic. What science does is understand our use of logic and apply it to situations that are not obvious. For example, when people used to look up into the sky at night and see those lights up there, they didn't know what they were, and they didn't have telescopes. And for most of the existence of humanity, for approximately 300,000 years of human history, human beings didn't know really what those lights were. They came up, therefore, with beliefs about those lights. They believed, some people believed that those lights themselves were gods. And they gave the gods names. They gave the stars names of gods. And they led their lives according to the patterns of stars in the sky, the constellations, the movements of stars, and the stories associated with those stars, and also in the sky, the sun and the moon and the planets. The planets, the word planet is derived from or used or means in an ancient language, I forget which language, probably Greek or Latin or something, but it means wandering stars. Because if you watch the stars move across the sky, they all move together at nighttime. But if you follow the movement of the planets, it's different from that movement of stars. The stars wander across the sky, sometimes even changing direction like this over the days and months. Planet means wandering stars. And they didn't know why. They didn't know what was going on, so they made up beliefs about all of those things, and some of those beliefs were gods. They didn't know how the earth was formed, or how the sun was formed, or how stars are formed. So they came up with ideas, they came up with stories, those stories seemed just as likely as anything else, and they believed those stories, and those beliefs got passed on. Also, things that were not obvious to people were they didn't understand diseases, illnesses. Why did my child just get that disease and die? Okay, or why is my wife ill? That sort of thing. Why am I ill? Why am I sick? And without the knowledge of microbes, without the knowledge of viruses and bacteria and other small organisms and also non-living things like viruses are not technically alive, without that knowledge, you can see why many people throughout our history assumed, believed, came up with an idea, a theory, and believed that the reason for illness was dark magic. One of the reasons why hundreds of people were killed, thousands of people were killed over the years during medieval times, during times when people believed more in witches. The reason people were killed is because when somebody got ill and they wanted to explain the illness, they looked around to see, well, who might have put a spell on me or that person who's ill, who might have cursed them, who might be conjuring up the devil to do something bad, because obviously illnesses are bad. And badness doesn't just happen by itself. There must be witchcraft involved. And subsequently, thousands of people were killed incorrectly because of beliefs, because people didn't know how to use logic to work out truths about reality that are not obvious. So on a microscopic scale, on a cosmic scale out there, whenever the scale is outside of our immediate logical perceptive zone, people believe in things, and they don't know how to use logic. But we can use the same logical processes that we use to know that this is not an elephant, to know that the stars are just like our sun. Our sun is a star. And we can use the same logical processes, just taking it to a lot greater mental extent, intellectual extent. We can prove that the earth is not flat, because that's not obvious at our sort of macroscopic scale. You need to sort of get out a little bit and analyze on cosmic scales before you can figure out that the earth is spherical. I apologize if this goes against your beliefs, any flat earthers out there. But what I have done, the point that I'm trying to make, is that science is science because it uses logic to work things out in a way that are proved. Science is not a belief system. It is a way of extrapolating logical thought processes to our reality in a way that are replicatable, provable, over and over and over. Whatever country in the world you're in, you can do Millikan's oil drop experiment and figure out the charge on a single electron. What is it? Negative 1.602 times 10 to the negative 19 coulombs. There you go. That's the useless things I have in the back of my mind. Maybe not useless, maybe valuable knowledge, because knowing that I can work out things like electricity, and I can construct electrical pieces of equipment like a cell phone or a computer. Our computers are not built on faith. They're not built on belief. They're built on a logical understanding of reality such that we can rely upon them most of the time. Everything goes wrong, but then we can figure out logically why they go wrong. So I've used logic and I've used science in order to answer some of these big questions. And I'm a space scientist. I'm a cosmologist. I went to university and I learned astrophysics. I learned space science. I learned spacecraft design. I was designing spacecraft, hypothetical spacecraft. So I learned about how the universe is. In the same way that we can look up at the sun and say, well, yeah, we know that sun is a star, is just bigger because it's closer. We can look out into the universe and figure a lot out. And we can look deeper and deeper and deeper into the universe and see further and further and further backwards in time. We can look back, actually, using our telescopes, all the way back to the start of the universe. Let me explain that. You know, the speed of light is finite. It has a certain speed. And when you see an object in your room, it's because light has, like these lights behind me. If I turn around and look at the light that's coming out of those lights on my shelves there, that light is traveling at 3 times 10 to the 8 meters per second, and it travels into my eye. Now, it looks pretty much instantaneous. Whatever happens in my room seems, in appearance-wise, to be instantaneous, because that's such a fast speed that it's like as soon as something happens, like the light has entered my eyes and I see that it happened. But if you go outside and you I don't know, there's an explosion down the road, you would see the explosion, or if there's a car crash like 2 blocks away, if you could see it, you might see it, and then because the speed of sound travels at about 340 meters per second, it would be a short period of time before you hear it. But with the speed of light, that's happening so fast, that's moving so fast, that even with a car crash down the block, it's almost instantaneous. You wouldn't notice any difference between it actually happening and you seeing it. But if you look at the moon, well, that's a second or two away from us in terms of light traveling. The light from the let's see if I can try and remember the exact times. Okay, it's about 8 light seconds away. So sun shines on the moon, it reflects off the moon. It takes about 8 seconds for that light that's reflected off the moon to enter your eye. That means that when you look at the moon, you're seeing how it was about 6 to 8 seconds, depending on the lunar orbit. When you look at the sun itself, don't look at the sun itself. That's not a good idea, even though I know some people try and do that in order to seek some kind of spiritual insight or ability, but don't look at the sun. But if you glance at the sunlight that's traveling from the sun to the earth, that takes about 8 minutes to get to us. So if you were to look at the sun in the sky, you would see how it looked about 8 minutes ago. If you go outside and see that the sun is still up there. Well, it might not be. It might just have been eaten by a giant mutant space donkey, and you would not know for another 8 minutes. When we look at the nearest stars like Alpha Centauri, Barnard's star, they're approximately 5 light years away. It takes light 5 years to travel that huge distance across space to us. And so when we see even the nearest stars in the sky, we're not seeing how they look right now. We're seeing how they looked 5 years ago. When you look at stars that are at the other side of the galaxy, it's taken 100 to 150 years for that, 100 to 150,000 years for that light to get to us. And when we look at something like the Andromeda galaxy up there, well, you're seeing how the Andromeda galaxy looked about 1 million years, because the light that's traveled through space from the Andromeda galaxy to us has taken about 1 million years to get to us. And we can keep doing that. We can keep looking at more and more distant objects, and we can use telescopes to look further and further and further and deeper and deeper and deeper into space. So when you get telescopes like Hubble and the James Webb Space Telescope taking photographs of some of those distant galaxies, that light has taken billions of years traveling through space before it gets to those telescopes. And therefore, we're seeing the photograph we end up getting is how the universe was, how it looked billions of years ago. And we can keep looking deeper and deeper and deeper until we can see the earliest stars. And James Webb Space Telescope can do that, the earliest stars. And we can use our scientific knowledge. We can use logic to work out the ages of those stars. And it ends up being in the region of 13 billion years old, those distant objects. That's the age of the objects. And we can keep looking further and further and further until before the stars, when the universe was dark. We can look that far. We can look into the deepest, darkest areas. And what we see when we look that deep into space is something called the microwave background radiation. And it's a very long wavelength, low frequency. And it is the afterglow of the Big Bang. And it's exactly the right frequency, wavelength, distribution to be the afterglow of the Big Bang. And that's what we see. We can photograph the Big Bang. There are photographs of the Big Bang that you can see. Now, it's not going to look like a photograph that you might expect, like of a fiery explosion, because it's in the microwave region of the electromagnetic spectrum, and we don't see in the microwave region of the electromagnetic spectrum, so we have to use false color, and so it's not going to look like much to most people, but we can see it, and science tells us exactly what it is. It's exactly in the right place, looking exactly. What I'm trying to tell you is that the Big Bang is not a theory, and anybody that tells you that the Big Bang is a theory is just doesn't understand it. The Big Bang is something that's been proved. That is how our universe came into existence. We can see it. We can photograph it. We can also, that's just one of many pieces of evidence to tell us where the universe came from. The universe came from a Big Bang. So we know where the universe came from. We can watch from that point forwards how the universe evolved. From that point, about 13 billion years ago to the present day, we can see how the universe evolved. We can see where it came from. And we do not see, when we look into that, a creator. We do not see a creator doing anything. When we look at the formation of our solar system, when we use science to study the formation of our solar system, we find the same thing. We can answer those questions about where the universe came from, and everything is consistent and everything is logical and everything makes sense. And we know that a creator being wasn't needed in order to create the earth. We know that a creator being wasn't needed to create life on earth or humans. We can look back and, we can reject this if it goes against our beliefs, but we can prove that humanity evolved. I believe in aliens, and I believe in aliens interacting with humans, but I also can prove that the human species evolved on the end of at least 13 other archaic human species that we've been able to prove. So when we're answering the question, what is the meaning of life? If we can prove that a creator being wasn't needed to produce us, to produce the universe, to produce the earth, to produce us, we can essentially prove that a creator being didn't create us. We can essentially prove that we can't rule out that before the universe, somebody pushed a button and created the universe and let the universe unfold, but we can prove that we weren't created, like designed with conscious intent to end up being specifically the way we are today. We can prove that because if you can prove something that is contrary to that, then you prove that not to be true. If you can prove that if the x is equal to 2 and not equal to, if you can prove that x equals 2, you're simultaneously proving that x is not equal to 3. That's what we can do when we prove the Big Bang and the formation of the universe and evolution. That's why those things are so dangerous and not liked and rejected by so many religious people. But we can prove that we weren't created. Therefore, what does that mean for our meaning of life? What that means for our meaning of life is we can actually, if you gain this knowledge that I've been talking about, and it's not easy knowledge to gain. Not many people have gone to university and learnt. Not a very big percentage of the population has gone to university and learnt all of these cosmological things in order to acquire knowledge. Most people just accept things like that as, well, I'm just going to believe it because clever people say it's probably true, or I'm not going to believe it because it goes against my beliefs. We can choose whether or not to believe things like that, but we also have the ability to prove that we weren't created, and therefore we have the ability to prove that if there is a meaning of life, then it's not one that's been predetermined and given to us. Some people believe that aliens put us here, and therefore maybe aliens have our meaning of life. No, you can prove that x is equal to 2, and therefore x is not equal to 3. You can prove that we really did evolve, and therefore the aliens really didn't put us here. Now, you can't prove that aliens are not manipulating humans and maybe interfering and maybe a little bit of genetic manipulation on very low levels. Maybe, it's hard to prove those things not to be true because we see aliens coming in and doing breeding experiments and procedures with some of us. But that's different from creating. That's just sort of little modifications. Could be that aliens have purposes for some people. And that's actually true. There are alien beings out there who are creating hybrids and also downloading information and instructions for what to do in the future. They're downloading those things into humans. Some humans do have purposes that our alien friends are giving to us. And none of those purposes are dark or for negative reasons. It's not like they're trying to overtake the planet. It's more like they're trying to save life on the planet and save good people. But it could be that there's a meaning of life for those people that's external to them. So, we can speculate about whether or not other beings have meanings of life for us. But I think that it's fair to say that we have the ability to choose our own purposes in life. Unless it's really obvious to us that somebody else has given us a purpose, given us a meaning, and we're choosing to accept that meaning, then we have the right, we have the ability to determine our own meanings of life. So imagine for a second that it's entirely up to us about our meanings of life. What that means is it's entirely up to us in how we answer the question, what should I do with my life? And most people think that even if there is a creator being, we still have that free will to ask the question, what should I do with my life? In effect, to determine our own meanings of life. So if we have that freedom, if we have that ability, then what should we do with our meanings of life? What is the meaning of life for us? Well, that might be a good question to ask yourself now. And I'm going to give you some ideas to help you determine your own meanings of life. If you don't already have them, I'm sure a lot of people already have them. I'm going to suggest that people consider, well, what matters to you in life? What matters to you? What matters to you so much that it's worth making it your meaning of life? Do you have any causes or interests? Do you have an idea that you want to do good? Would you like to help others? You want to help your family? Is your meaning of life, could your meaning of life be to create things? If you have the freedom to determine what your meaning of life is, what are you going to choose? We have, and again, some people, their beliefs, they will disagree with me, but we have a limited amount of time on this earth in our biological bodies. What are we going to do with that time? Imagine the idea that we're not reincarnated. That's a belief. And if you look into it, it doesn't quite add up. Sure, there's some really convincing evidence that something is going on where people are having access to memories of past lives, but it doesn't add up that everybody on this planet, their spirits are being recycled over and over and over and over and over. But whether you believe that or not, just imagine for a second that that's not something that's going to happen, that you're not going to be able to just waste away this life. You've only got one life to get it right. You've only got the rest of this one life to get right. What are you going to do with your one life? And that's hard for a lot of people, especially if you're close, you're most of the way through your lives. What are you going to do with your life? I'm going to make some suggestions to you. And these are just ideas. These are not truths. These are just ideas. Why don't you consider being someone that you consider to be wise? Wisdom is usually held up in quite high esteem. Think about somebody that you consider to be wise. Maybe try and be like them. Maybe try and be like your own wise person, whoever that is. John Boy Walton or Yoda or whoever it is. Try and be wise. Figure out what wise means to you and learn in order to become wise. Become someone in your life now whom in 100 years from now, into the future, 100 years into the future, people are not going to look back at who you are today and judge you to be a bad person. It's easy for us today to look back at people who lived 100 years ago and say, well, they were a bit sexist, weren't they? Or 200 years ago and say, well, they were a bit racist, weren't they? And judge people in the past harshly. 100 years from now, is somebody going to be able to look from the future at you now and judge you, well, you were a bit this? So really try and figure out who you are and if everything you're doing is as good as it can be. Learn to know, not to believe. Be good. Be right. Trying to help others is usually considered to be a pretty worthy reason for living, a pretty worthy cause, a meaning of life. I'll tell you my meaning of life: to do whatever I can to promote universal love, universal peace, and universal well-being. If you are harming anybody, that's not a good meaning of life. If you are helping others universally, by universally I mean everybody without negative discrimination, even interspecies, even across species. If you're universally helping people and not harming people, then that's a good meaning of life. If you're harming people because you think they deserve it, well, that's a subjective judgment based on your subjective beliefs. And 100 years from now, or even 5 years from now, when you're dead and you look back at it and you see that you misjudged people, you might find yourself really regretting going around harming anybody at all. So helping rather than harming is a good idea. If anybody wants to participate in any of my events that I do outside of this podcast, then I've put the Galactic Wisdom Patreon group website up there. If you were to join that, you will see where you can participate in activities that I do. If anybody wants to find out more specifically about specific activities like tour events and my contact events, then just send me an email. I would like to thank everybody very much for watching this. I wish you peace, love, and well-being. Take care. See you next week.